I moved to, I don't know, I was going to move to take something off the agenda, so.
I'll let Tim strike my motion.
I'd like to remove action item 4.2 from the agenda and move it to another board meeting.
I believe that would be a motion to postpone. Would that be a motion to postpone? I second that motion. And you'll be moving it to what number?
I'm sorry.
So, we've gone blank. The superintendent is asking for a 2% raise on the to-be-determined third year of his contract.
Second. Discussion. Okay, hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-1. All right, study session items. So 5.1 then will be the operating referendum discussion. Jennifer, and I believe you have something with you.
I do. So Michael Davis, I'm hoping is going to come up shortly. He's going.
You got the
Oh,
microphone?
there you are, way back there.
You got a microphone?
Mike's going to come up first to talk about the replacement cycle question that you had asked about, and then we'll proceed from there.
Hello. Anything specific you want to know, or should I just give you a rundown of why we replace our technology when we do?
That would, yeah, give the rundown.
Okay. So for Chromebooks, it's pretty self-explanatory because they have an operating system lifespan of 5 years from the date they're manufactured. So at that point, they can no longer get security updates. Kind of throughout the region, most districts are anywhere between 2 and 4 year cycle on that. We've been 4 years, and we're going to try to extend that to 5 moving forward, just because they're becoming better devices the longer they've been around. iPads is a little less clear because Apple doesn't provide us with any timeline like that of how long those operating systems are valid before they're going to release a new one that won't be compatible with the programs we use. 3 to 4 years is usually pretty safe. We keep those around for 5 years. Other districts are more around 3 or 4 years. Our desktop computers, which that's what our classroom teachers have, and then office staff in this building and throughout the other offices in the schools. Those were neglected a little bit longer than we like them to be. We're right at 5 years with those as well, but we pushed those out more like 6 to 8 years because we needed the money for Chromebooks and iPads the last couple of years. And we were able to get half the district of those replaced this current summer and then last summer by purchasing refurbished units that have 3-year warranties, but we're going to try to make those last 5 years as well. Any questions or clarifications there?
Is there ever a salvage value to any of this stuff?
iPads, yes, sometimes can be worth some money. We went down that road 6 years ago, probably was the last time we replaced those. Chromebooks usually have more value to keep around because the screens and keyboards and stuff like that can be pulled out and put into different devices. But desktops, no, hardly any value there.
No other questions for Mike?
I asked the question originally, and so I wanted, thank you for the update. Appreciate that.
Okay, so next we have, is that working? Oh, there we go. So next we have Jeff Seeley is here from Ellers, who is our financial consultant, and he's got a PowerPoint that he'll be sharing. A lot of it, or some of it, is the same information we went over last time, but then he's going to answer the question about our ag property, and with the increase to the ag to school credit, what that will look like with the two options we're considering.
All right, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. And we're going to talk operating referendum and a little bit about capital projects levy. So we have PowerPoint here. We'll just go through that. So we're going to start kind of basic here, cover what is an operating referendum. And it's simply an election ballot question. It allows districts to generate additional revenue for the general education fund. And the revenue is provided through a combination of local property taxes, and some districts qualify for some state aid on it. It's an annual levy, it's not a debt issue, and it can be used, the revenue can be used for virtually any operations, including capital items. So, whoa. Let's see.
That's quick.
Okay, we're done. Any questions? So the current referendum provisions within the law, you have to approve a per pupil amount, $1 per pupil amount. So you identify that particular amount, and that's what shows up on the ballot. It can be a fixed amount or subject to annual inflationary adjustment. It can only go out to 10 years. The revenue is capped for fiscal 21, the current fiscal year we're entering, at $1,780. The cap is adjusted annually per inflation. If you're a sparsely district, there is no cap, and some districts going back have a grandfather clause with a different cap number. You can only run one operating referendum election per year, unless you're in statutory operating debt, which you're not. The vote can only occur at the November general election, unless you hold it by mail ballot. Election is held either 1 or 2 years prior you're looking at options that would go into effect 2 years out. So you're in the 1 year prior, if you will. Your existing referendum goes through fiscal 2022, so next year you have authority. And notices must be sent to all the taxpayers. So an operating referendum property tax is spread on the referendum market value. Most of your taxes are spread on net tax capacity, including bonds and community education, general taxes. So this is a little bit different. Referendum property taxes are not levied on the seasonal rec property, which you don't have much of, or on ag land, which you have about 25% of your district is comprised of qualified ag land. So the referendum only affects the house garage 1 acre. It does not affect the cropland. And the other way it's different than taxes on net tax capacity is that the type of property does not make a difference in how much you pay. So a $100,000 residence will pay the same as a $100,000 business, whereas taxes on net tax capacity, they pay more for a business than for a house. So if it's the value is the same, they pay the same. And it can qualify for state aid. And that is dependent on the amount of referendum market value, property value per resident pupil. Okay, so I can't quite see this far, but thank you. So the main thing on this chart is you have your types of properties on the left, and then the middle column, the referendum market value, is actually the property value that this referendum would be spread on. And then the far right set of columns is the net tax capacity. So you can see the main difference is your ag land, your qualifying ag, is about 25%. So any levy spread on net tax capacity, such as your bonds or capital projects levy, which we'll talk about, the ag land, owners of ag land will pay property taxes on that, where it's removed from the referendum market value. So there's 2 tiers of aid when it comes to a referendum. And the first $460 per pupil is aided at the highest level. And currently you're at around 41%. And the way that's determined is they take your referendum market value per student and compare it to a state number that's been established. If you're lower than that, you qualify for aid. If you're higher, you don't. And the lower you are from that state level, the higher your aid. So if the number of pupils dramatically decreased or your property value dramatically increased, your aid would go down and vice versa. So on the second tier, anything over 460, your property value is high enough that you don't qualify for aid. So other factors impacting the allowance, all districts qualify for $724 levy and budget process.
I ask a question? So when you say special elections, okay, there's the answer. It's just the general election. We're just saying it's a special question.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Go back a couple slides. Okay, hold on, slope forward, Ashley. Keep on going. Keep on going. Okay. So talk us through this slide for the questions. So what question would go with this slide?
Okay, the question, it would be a two-part question. Question one would be the renewal of your operating referendum. The referendum itself, it's a renewal, won't have a tax impact, they're already paying for that. This would be question two of that, adding $500,000 in the form of a technology or capital project levy. So that the one column shows the tax impact of that capital project levy. The next column shows how it's offset by the new credit. Now, keep in mind that credit will go into place regardless of which option you choose. It's just that whether or not the capital project column will show up there.
So,
the money can only be used for technology then. It can't be switched either other way, whereas the operating levy can be used for...
technology related.
Okay.
Yep.
Technology related.
I would say that we did show last time that we've got more than $500,000 every year that qualify for the capital project levy expenditures. And then, of course, that frees up the money in our other budget for other things.
Okay, so to be clear here, so if we went out with a two-question levy, question one, okay, if we do a straight renewal, there's language in there that we're increasing your taxes. Question two, when I go out and have conversations with the community, I'm talking to the farmers, and I show them the reduction, they're going to show up at the ballot box, and it's going to say, we're going to increase your taxes. Right?
Yes. With the renewal, the operating referendum renewal, or question one in that scenario, it will say that you're voting for the renewal of the operating referendum. It won't say that you're voting for a tax increase. So that's the nice thing about the renewal. Question two, whether it's a second operating referendum or this capital project, it's going to say that you're voting for a tax increase. And in that scenario, the people who own ag land are going to see a credit. Of course, if you did an operating referendum, they would get to keep more of that credit, where the capital projects levy offsets that to some degree.
On the second question, does state aid come into effect there? Because you mentioned before that state aid was lost on the capital referendum.
Yeah, not on a capital project.
And so this is on top of the existing referendum amount that residents would be paying then, correct?
Yes.
Do we know how much that is for a $100,000 house?
And once again, question one, if it stood by itself or was with two questions, just the renewal will not say that there's a tax increase?
It will say that you're voting for the renewal of an expiring levy.
But will it still have that?
Not if you add inflationary, you can't change it.
currently have inflationary language.
Well, then you can keep it, yes. What will happen is, the very first year,
So when we're thinking of ag property, so they're seeing a decrease because the OPEB is falling off, and that will be a continued situation if we don't do anything else. So where does the athletic complex fall then in the taxes? Is that just on the residential then? Not ag?
the building bond is,
But the ag tax credit goes into effect for the athletic bond
it does.
because it's a facility instead of the OPEB, and that's where they're getting the money back.
Will we be getting, like, can we get this whole PowerPoint presentation sent to us so we can kind of look at it again a couple more times?
And again, I think just something that the board needs to consider is, you've seen the statistics or the data, the graphs on election year, success rate in these referendums. And I think something you should weigh is, do you want to go with a one question versus a two in the current political environment we live in? A one question, if for the same amount of money, will cost a bit more dollars on our residential folks and our commercial folks than a two-question capital project, which would spread it more throughout. But that's just something that you'll have to weigh. And
What's the risk when you do two questions? If we do two questions this fall, question one passes, question two fails, we're going to have to come back again. Now it's only going to be one question on the ballot, and that question is going to stay. It will increase your taxes.
yes,
So that could be the risk there, because the reality of a renewal is basically 100% in past history.
mm-hmm. So, but you can shape it so it's a one question with an increase, or you can go with the two questions. And then the two questions are operating versus the capital projects.
I personally prefer the 2 questions. I just think, especially with just economic climate and stuff, then the voters have a choice. Do we want to just keep doing what we're doing? And maybe a lot of voters feel comfortable with that, and they can have that choice if they want to make a change or not. So I kind of like giving them a little bit more options there instead of a yes or a no. They get, okay, we can handle this, but we can't handle that kind of scenario.
If you do the 1 question, does that also, can that include the inflationary amount also? Okay.
I think we should do the 2 question and go this fall to give them an option. And I guess I don't care if it's a presidential year or not, at least we find out what they're thinking, and that does give us a second chance in a year from now to go forward with another referendum.
Could we go back to the question slide, please? Okay, thank you, yeah. I also would support a 2 question, because even when we are renewing, we're basically, it is a new tax, because the old one, it would go away if they don't agree to renew. So I do like giving them more of an option. And I do like to go out in a general election as well to give most people a voice in the election.
With the 2 question one again, question 1 has to pass in order for have question 2 to also pass or not, or fail. You can't just pass question 2, is that correct?
And do all of the questions, other than the first question, start in 22? They wouldn't start immediately like the first one? Okay. And do we have any, I have no concept of what an average ag acreage would be in the county. I mean, we always pick out a $100,000 home, but do we have any idea of what the average impact would be in the county?
I think there's a difference between what land sells for and what it's taxed at. So I know a lot of land is going far beyond what its real value is when you look at sales and so on, but that's not the taxable value. So if we could gather that information, that would be helpful.
It would be interesting to know, like as mentioned earlier, the homestead, the farm with the actual house on the property, like his family farm versus if there's like other big farms that might not be family farms. Or are they all pretty much family farms? Some are just really big. I don't know, but if there's a separation there, I'd be interested to know that too. I'm thinking there is like ag as you're a farm family versus ag, someone just bought land in the area to run a business. I mean, I would see that differently and want to know the impacts differently, if we could find it out.
I think it's safe to say that most farmers these days go beyond the homestead. I mean, their ag land is considerably more than the homestead portion of it.
Could you go to the ag slide again, please? So in all of them, they do kind of show the bottom two rows. The one is the homestead row and the other is the non-homestead.
I would say however we approach this, I think it's important that the education that goes along with it to the taxpayers is going to be crucial, especially around the ag land piece, because I think that's,
Anything else for Jeff or Jennifer?
The timing was good before on Hammer Field, because that came in right when the new school. To keep us ahead of the game.
And how we need this to keep up. This would be the minimum needed, what we need to keep up with our technological needs. It's not a, pie in the sky, we're going to do extra things with it. It's just to keep us above water.
Thank you very much. 5.2 would be special education update. Tammy Elfs.
will get to know the students better.
How many special ed teachers typically in an elementary?
Pardon?
How many special ed case managers typically in an elementary?
It depends on the number of students. Most of them have 3. I
Okay,
think Culverson has 3.5 and Sibley has 2. So it
Okay.
depends upon the number of special ed students in each building.
and are these just special ed paras or all paras?
Oh, I thought you said teachers.
No, I asked teachers first, and then I'm wondering about the 2 paras.
They're just special ed parents.
Okay.
And again, this was a directive loud and clear from the board that we were high on our special ed costs for a number of years, and this is Tammy's response to that directive.
Thank you, Tammy. Dr. Funk, 5.3. School year planning update.
Okay, so Ashley, you want to go ahead and find the link? There you go. So we, we talked about a few weeks ago, we were hopeful that on June 27th, the governor would announce his plans for the upcoming school year, and he did, but it wasn't until, I think, the 30th. So we've been pretty busy. Once again, I'll just back things up. We had a meeting back in July 7th with a number of folks throughout the district that we reviewed summer school, lessons learned, because we are really one of the only schools in southern Minnesota districts that did a summer school. So we got some lessons learned out of that. Coming out of that meeting, we committed to really planning moving forward. And so the governor's announcement came out on Thursday. About 3 o'clock Thursday afternoon, I notified the ALEA what, according to the new plan, what we qualify for, and that is hybrid learning at the secondary level and in-person at the elementary level. So we had an administrative meeting on Friday, most of the day, going through that. And then Dave and I and Kathy met with ALE leadership at 1 o'clock this afternoon to talk through some district level questions that came up. And in the meantime, all of our support folks have been putting together this website, which we're showing to the board right now, and we'll be rolling out to the community after this meeting tonight, which will cover a lot of the questions related to COVID-19. So unbeknownst to you, unless you're looking at your email, MSBA just sent out a resolution, which I'm not going to ask the board to approve tonight. We could maybe consider to approve it at the next meeting. But basically, the resolution is, I'll find it here quick. It says the governor came out with his executive order, and that the superintendent has recommended to the school board that whatever we decide will be the base learning model to be implemented at the commencement of the 2021 school year. So I'm recommending tonight, and we don't have the official resolution in front of us, that we comply with what the governor has directed, and that is to follow the county health numbers, which allow us to start school in a hybrid manner for secondary and in person for the elementary. So now, having said that, I've got the website. I just want to kind of quick run through here, and I'm going to have some folks behind me talk, and so if you got the microphone back there, I just want to make the board aware, and I know we talked for a couple hours of the other couple weeks ago on this issue. This is what we're rolling out to folks now that we know what we're dealing with and what we'll have in place. And as we're talking through this, go ahead and feel free to ask questions. So go ahead, Kathy.
So we'll start with health, the health and safety. And one
other document we are still actually just working on up to the board meeting, and it is based on a state templates preparedness plan. And actually, Mary Jo started it a few weeks ago because we had to have something ready for a single student ACT test situation here in the district. And so that also will come forward here. But if we go to the bottom where it says MDE guidance, I think that's maybe how we got here. And you'll see that these are the numbers. We're at 11.41 cases, which puts us on that second row. In-person learning for elementary students, hybrid learning for secondary students. And so that is, as the superintendent said, the recommendation. We would have to do some significant numbers in the county to move off of that, since we're kind of right on the border there. And then down below that is really the Department of Ed and the Department of Health have done a great job providing us documents, and so our job now is to get that out to people. The first document, best practices for masks, this we're actually just making revisions in our preparedness document due to the governor's executive order last week, but a lot of people ask questions about what about people with special circumstances, and so this is really a pretty nice guiding document. As the superintendent in the article in the newspaper is, you know, what about somebody who has special circumstances? And so it's pretty well laid out for us to help make those decisions. You know, we've had a couple, we know that the CDC says masks are best, but we know there are other situations where shields are the clear masks for speech people or hearing impaired, some of our high needs families, children, and so we're trying to work through this guidance. So I think that's, again, very well laid out for us. And then we come back to the next question, really the second to most probably asked questions is, what do we do if someone has COVID symptoms? So this is the decision tree, and this actually was out this summer. So we were able to think about this as we went through our summer school programming. And we have this in a couple of different forms. We have it in this form, we have it in a couple of flow charts, and we also have kind of the narrative guidance. But basically it says what happens if an employee shows or a student shows symptoms, and what happens then if they're positive or negative. So we probably need to read through all of that with you unless. And then the narrative.
Go back up.
We're still in MDE guidance down, keep going down to lab confirmed case protocol. So this is, a lot of folks have asked this question. Again, very well laid out. So we collect the phone number, we contact MDH, the Department of Health. We also will have assistance from the co-op, was somebody assigned to us as of August 24th to help with that contact. We will gather information and share it with the Department of Health. They then will come back, and if they know of a case before we do, they will contact us, and then they'll run through this protocol. You had somebody who tested positive. We are going to take a look at close contacts, those people who were within 6 feet of the person who was sick while they were considered to be infectious for 15 minutes or more. And that's really a significant piece. That is what the Department of Health will look at and then gather all kinds of information around that. So somebody asked, will we contact the Department of Health on every incident? Yes, we are mandated to do that. So if a parent notifies us, we will contact the Department of Health. The Department of Health may contact us before a parent contacts us. Employee contacts us, we will contact the Department of Health. And then we will work closely with them and our navigator from the co-op through all that happens next. So it says consultation with MDH follow-up team. And these are questions they're going to ask. How long was the person on site? Whom did that person come into contact with? Was that person with a closed group? Were they mixing with other people or classrooms? We had a great conversation with the ALA this afternoon on some of these very questions. And so the Department of Health will guide us through that. And then they will recommendation. They have pre-populated form letters that will go out from us, basically stating a small piece of the incident. If you're a close contact, you're going to be asked to quarantine for 14 days. If you were not, you're just going to be asked to watch, but you may have, been in a classroom before or after a student, but not with them for 15 minutes or an adult, then they're going to tell you to watch for symptoms.
How are they defining the 15 minutes? If I'm in a classroom all day long and I have 5 minutes of contact and then come back later and another 5, or is it?
We have a team that meets daily that we've set up that will be going through all this, reviewing all this.
And so they will, if they ask us that question, we'll go back and find that information out for them. And so, and they were, we had lots of questions, a couple of questions, not tons this summer, and we were able to work with Department of Health with this. They have a letter translated into Spanish and Korean for us, and the recommendation is to notify by phone those who are in close contact, also send a letter out, and then the letter will go out to those who may have been around the individual but not a close contact. So cleaning protocols, we are starting to get our cleaning supplies out in the buildings. We know that staff are coming in and they're starting to clean their classrooms. And so working with Steve Anderson and the custodians to put those cleaning supplies in every classroom. So teachers, as they come in now, can start preparing, and then we'll be there, of course, throughout the year. If a parent or child is diagnosed, then they give us some guidance here. So I think that's obviously a lot of folks are wondering what that process is, and it's pretty well laid out for us for that. They also have playground guidance, which we actually used over the summer as our students were out on the playgrounds this summer. And then go back a page. The other page is materials and resources for us. So if we, we have tons of documents from the Department of Health. What does the health screening look like? Should we be promoting how to safely wear a mask? And so these are the things that tomorrow and the rest of this week, some of our instructional leadership teams made up of teachers and admins from buildings will be looking at our preparedness plan, some of these documents, reviewing them, talking about instructionally, what are some other things we need to do and have in classrooms, because the hybrid model at the secondary will look a little different than the elementary model.
Kathy?
Yes.
So if a student is sent home for 14 days because of exposure of some sort, is that student then on distant learning, or is that student just out of the loop for 14 days?
So our plan is that if a teacher is sent home, we know that because of exposure in the classroom, more than likely that, according to this guidance, that entire class will be sent home, and for 14 days. So one of the things we talked with the teachers about today is if that teacher feels fine, would they do distance learning with that group of students?
Let me answer that for you. So the intent would be to keep them current with the current program that they're on. Because we have two schools, actually 3 trains running here in the district. Okay, we've got our distance learning, we've got our hybrid, and we've got our in-person. So if the student has to go home for 14 days, we will try to educate with them within the model during that 14-day period that they're currently on. So we're not going to put them on the distance learning track because they might be doing something completely different.
Then probably that student would not have the same teacher.
They would.
They
We would
would.
try to get. It's kind of if a kid is sick for a long period of time right now, same sort of situation, we would send work home for the student.
Okay.
And that also allows the teacher.
Kathy, forgive me, one more detail on this. So if the student is home for 14 days, that student is technically not absent then?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So that's health and safety protocols.
So there's a guide on this that we saw from MDH, all right? What we've done is tried to simplify this so we can hand this to staff members and that they can look at themselves, okay, yes, no, here are some things that I should do. And really, again, keeping staff safety in mind. This is on the website, or will be on the website as soon as we're done with the board here tonight. So they'll have, this document will be available. And go back, Ashley, to the student symptoms chart. Same thing if we have a student within the classroom that has symptoms, it's a guide for the teacher as far as protocols that they can follow. And you can see the orange box there down at the bottom, and that is really the district COVID team. And what that team is, it's a team of nurses from the ALEA, myself, Kathy, COVID coordinators from each building, which are the principals on an ongoing basis as needed, and that we plan on meeting every morning at 9 o'clock. And when students come into the building, they will go through the thermal scanner first, and then during their first class, first hour of the day, we're going to have 3 or 4 screening questions we're going to ask of every student, and they will be filled out and populated in a spreadsheet. Same thing for staff. We have a new app that goes with our website that staff will be able to, when they come to work, answer 3 or 4 questions on how they're feeling that day, and then that'll populate a spreadsheet. At 9 o'clock that morning, the nurses and myself and Kathy will review the spreadsheet to see if we have any issues, any ongoing issues that, a student is not feeling well for a couple days in a row. We'll be able to take a look at that and make some decisions at the district-wide level. We'll also be able to identify, are we starting to get any COVID hotspots in any of our buildings, and have some decisions related to that.
Could this be the evaluation team reference that was in basically what Walls put out?
Yeah, the incident plan. So, yeah, we started working on that last spring.
The team then would,
So we would.
Do we have any, or are there any, is there any machinery in place so that students can actually be tested to determine if they're positive or negative? I mean, this is a question that it seems to be a rather popular one these days, and we seem to be lacking.
A question that's come up.
Right, and if they don't take a test, as according to the chart, if they do not get tested, then they're restricted from coming back for 14 days. Yep.
I have several questions. When you look at the number of incidences per 10,000, is that a guideline or something that's set in stone?
We would have to get approval working with the local Department of Health to move less than what we're doing. So if we wanted to go full-time K-12, we would have to work with our local Department of Health on that. We'd have to be able to, like, for example, I think out in Laverne right now, they had some big event that happened and a bunch of people got the COVID. So their number's like 70 right now. So, but what they're trying to say is, well, but this is because of this isolated event. This isn't our community as a whole. So if you can demonstrate somehow that it's an event that has nothing to do with teachers and students, then potentially you could go to a lesser, less restrictive setting. But there's some, the district cannot unilaterally on its own just decide to go to, okay, we want to go to online or in person for everybody at this point. We can go more restrictive as a district, but not less.
So if, you're looking at K through 5 going full-time, and then beyond that, a concern I have is, I know that childcare is going to be an issue throughout our whole district. I'm concerned about the child development that they miss by not being in school, and where I struggle really is when I look at grades 6 and 7, that to me those are critical ages, and why did we stop at 5th grade instead of 7th grade?
I think there's a physiological reason that the Department of Health is going with, and I think the rationale is physiologically 10 and younger are not as likely, because they're not as physically developed, to be carriers that will spread the COVID. Kids over 10 are more likely to spread. And so I think that was a big part of the thought process on why we've got 2 different sets of numbers depending on grade levels.
I just want to make it for the record, I don't like it.
For the record, I don't like any of the choices, but we don't have much, there's not much we can do about the situation that we're in. On the hybrid, the 6 to 12, the hybrid plan A and B, I'm assuming that when a student is on an off day, that's still a learning day for that student. So it isn't like we're going to,
Correct.
Otherwise we would have, in a semester's work, we'd have a quarter's work. So we're going to.
Correct. We're going to get into what it's going to look like here in a minute. I do want to say this. So, people always ask you, what keeps you up at night? One of the things that keeps me up at night is how they just kind of drop this on us, and I'll share this with you. All summer long, they said you're going to have one of 3 options. You're going to be distance learning, you're going to be in person, you're going to be hybrid. And so, okay, so all summer long, we've been looking at the various options out there. Yeah, we can do this, we can do this, we can do this. Thursday afternoon, they come out and they say, you can be both. And, okay, what's that mean? Well, okay, your elementary could be in person. So in person means the 6-foot social distancing does not apply. In person means the rules on the bus, you don't have to be 50%. You can put every kid on the bus. Okay? Well, that's great, but your secondary is now going to be hybrid because that's what your county numbers are at. So, okay, so my kids on the bus at the secondary level, how do I put them on the bus at 50% when the kids on the elementary level are all full on the bus. So what you're going to see, and this is an adjustment because after thinking long and hard about this, is we're going to add an expense to the district, and that is this. We are going to transport K-5 to school in the morning with just K-5 students on the bus. And Jennifer will get into this a little bit more in a minute. And then the buses are going to come back, and they're going to pick up our 612 kids and bring them to school, who will start about an hour later. And then our 612 kids will be picked up probably an hour before our K-5 kids and sent home so that the buses can come back and take care of our K-5 kids. Now, that's an extra cost, yes, but the other thing I can tell you at this point, we're only running buses 4 days a week. We're not going to be running them on Fridays. So there should be a cost savings there. And again, this is all something that we're in the process of having discussions with the transportation company.
So in doing that would.
You're only going to have 50% of your kids from high school, secondary, will be in school at a time. So they're already maxed at 50% on the secondary buses. And your elementary kids will not have any high school kids on the bus, so they'll already be lesser numbers, but they already fit within the parameters because they can be full. So that is what we're recommending we move forward with as far as the transportation piece. Again, to keep our kids safe and get them to school.
Is that
So-
something we can use COVID funds for?
Yes.
So what happens if we drop down to, it was 9, I believe? We
Great.
go on, I mean, it's every 2 weeks, correct?
Correct. So my recommendation to the board is we stick with it for first quarter, because let's get into it, let's get started with it, let's see how the quarter goes along, and then that we should have probably 3 or 4 times the data for us at that point. It shows where the trend line is going, and we can make a decision in late September on what we want to do for the second quarter. And again, we have asked the public to sign up for the first quarter only as far as what learning model they want to go with. And so that would be my recommendation at this point, is just stick with it for the first 9 weeks, and then we can adjust from there.
You brought up the survey. How are we doing on
I checked this morning. There were 2,000 some in the system. 75% were in person, 25% were distance learning. So again, when we're talking space in the buildings, that's 25% less than what within the elementary. And even if we're at 50% at the high school, there's another 25% off that 50%. So we are going to have a lot of space within Overly High School to start with here.
So the high school is 50%.
Under the hybrid model, they would be at 50.
50%.
So 50% will come on day A, 50% on day B. And
What
we'll,
happens if you have 25% that don't want to go to the high school, and you got some kids that are going to function really better by being at the school? Can they adjust? Could they be in more than the 2 days a week because you're under the 50, or they're just at the non?
so just be 2 days. Yep. So that's where we're at on that piece of it. But I'm probably talking too much, but we got more information behind me that people can.
I do have a question on fall sports and activities. Have they given any direction?
Coming out, Paul, are they coming out tomorrow? Tomorrow. And just a quick clarification on that. We didn't know last week, we kind of guessed, and we were right, that if you're doing distance learning through your school district, you are eligible to participate in state high school league events. You can participate in state high school league events, so.
With the 2 sections, the A group, the B group, is alphabetical?
We haven't decided yet.
Okay. And will there be AP classes offered also?
We will see who is available to teach Okay, there might, AP probably, CIS, we're not so sure.
I don't mean to hammer on the mask. That is honestly my biggest concern about students complying. I mean, we're dealing with teenagers and that's what they're supposed to do is try to rebel. I mean, it's in their nature. Like, how are we going to handle that?
Like we would any other directive. If your directive is to wear your mask or to put your phone away, that's kind of how we handle it, and we're trying to educate.
Who's responsible on the bus? Is it the driver?
No. No, we're not going to have the driver police mask. Kids are going to be told to wear the mask on the bus.
I know we're kind of firing questions at you, but I have two questions. There's the AB schedule that we saw last time we met.
Yep.
Was Monday, Tuesday, and it was Thursday for B. Now it's Monday, Wednesday. Can you kind of talk through that a little bit?
Yep, because of we weren't sure what the hybrid is going to look like, and we're not completely sure what it's going to look like yet. The high school staff's meeting tomorrow on it, but we felt it would be better. The model that they're kind of looking at is, particularly with the transportation piece, if school is starting a little bit later in the morning, teachers will have an hour and a half when they get to work that they can reach out to kids online from probably the previous day and work with them, and then they'll have some time at the end of the day to touch base with them. I think it's just more of a consistent approach than the 2 days in a row. But it may come back with something different, but I think that's what we're looking at right now is the A one day, B the next.
So, one other question, many questions actually. I'm assuming that students who prefer not to be face-to-face have a right to that option?
Correct. So 25% of our students have chosen not, they are at this point saying we want to do distance learning.
Okay, how then would those students be provided with the same schedule that they would have were they face-to-face, but they would just be remote? I mean,
They will have a different group of teachers than the individuals who are teaching students in the hybrid model or daily at the elementary. So what we are doing is we have John Double will be the administrator in charge of the distance learning program. We are in the process of working with teachers to identify teachers who can't come in and work for medical reasons or for family reasons, or maybe who want to teach distance learning. So we're working with, Kathy's working with those individual teachers, and then that pool will be considered our distance learning academy. And the students going to the distance learning academy may have a similar experience, but it will not be the same as the students who are going through the hybrid or through the in-person learning.
So I would, it would be an absolute miracle if the staff who were distance teaching would match with the students that were distant learning.
It would be, and that's why we say we may be asking for expertise in some areas for the distance learning if we don't have enough.
Would it just occurs to me, would it be possible for a teacher who is in the building teaching face-to-face to provide distant learning services for those students for whom there are no distance learning teachers available to accommodate their specific course?
Not at this time, but that's something we can look at.
Okay.
Regarding distance learning and then also the hybrid, and distance learning, are they going to be in like class like all day? Or is it going to be during certain hours, or is it going to be flexible like it was before?
One of the things that we learned from our experience this spring was we were not consistent in our expectations K-12 for distance learning. So by identifying one individual who will be responsible for distance learning and working with those teachers who are going to be distance learning, we're going to develop some baseline expectations, probably at the elementary and at the secondary level, for classes, amount of time, et cetera. So I would say that the expectation will be more touch points throughout the day than maybe some of the cases we had this past spring.
Okay. And then kind of the same question, I guess, for the students who are on the hybrid, on their off day, kind of the same answer?
Yes.
But I suppose they won't be with their teacher, though.
They will be with their, I mean, so they will see their classroom teacher every other day, so.
So on their off days, they'll be kind of working more independently?
Yep, with check-ins with their classroom teachers.
Okay.
So because the classroom teachers will have time in the morning and the time at the end of the day to be able to check into the 12 or 15 kids that in each of their classes that they didn't see that day that were on the off day.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So Mike, you know, our teachers are so vital to the development of our students. And so when you look at the distance, I'm going to call it the distance pool teachers, do you have a feel for how big that is versus how much, the 25%?
Yeah, we're going to have to balance that. And again, I don't think it's big enough right now from what I've seen from the current numbers of teachers that have medical reasons or personal reasons why they can't be in person. So that's something we're going to be adjusting this week as we review the numbers and we review the licensure areas.
And I'm sure this will not be a pass-fail either, will it? Will it be graded all the way?
Correct. Okay, so Jennifer, you want to talk next here quick?
Yeah, I'll touch real quick on the cleaning and sanitizing under the health and safety protocols. So our district, we're going to provide disinfecting spray bottles and paper towels in each classroom and, media centers, offices. The custodians will be disinfecting the high-touch areas several times throughout the day. And then on Fridays, we will do a deep cleaning in every classroom and public space. Hand sanitizer and portable hand sanitizer stations will be distributed throughout the district. In our elementary classrooms, most of those have hand washing stations, so we'll certainly be encouraging students to wash their hands, which is preferable to hand sanitizer. Buses will be disinfected between routes, and we do have signage at each of the buildings now, which are going to illustrate the 6-foot distancing, which in the elementary schools, they're going to have them walk one direction on one side of the hallway, different direction on the other side, and things of that nature.
So I have a question.
Yes.
You know, the custodians evidently are going to have a lot more activities and a lot more things to do. Are we going to be required to have additional staff in order to provide that service?
Not yet, and what we're doing is Fridays will be distance learning or virtual learning throughout the district, and it'll be a deep clean day for the custodians. That's how we're approaching it at this point. So it'll give them an opportunity to get in and clean those buildings, with the exception of the one building that we'll have to provide daycare for on Fridays for essential workers. But so that's kind of our approach with it, is to do the deep clean that one day a week.
What is the plan for the school that has the child care? When are they going to get to that?
It was Halverson this past spring, and we haven't identified that building yet, but they will get to it probably later in the day on Friday.
You're just going to leave that at school for
right.
the last one to
Yep.
do? Okay.
creating too many risks by doing that?
At this point, with the number of students, by not having the secondary on the elementary buses, I don't think we need to do that at this point. It's just another change that the community does not need in the middle of this right now, I think. One of the things, again, and I can bring this to the resolution probably next month, but one of the things that, we are hearing from folks is we want time, we want more time. And so currently, we're supposed to be starting school on the 20th of August, which is a Thursday. We'd be starting on a Thursday, Friday. And there's supposed to be an 8th grade orientation and 6th grade orientation occurring on the 19th. We had a meeting with the ALEA this afternoon, and I proposed that to provide a little more time for folks, that we turn those 3 days into planning days for staff, so that they're more comfortable when they come back on the 24th with whatever model that they're going to be faced with. And again, I'm a proponent for the slight pushback in this, but I have to say, as a parent, my daughter has been out of school since March 15th. I think she's ready to go back. And I can't speak for other parents, but that's some feedback I'm hearing. And the other thing is, I told the board when we met in our retreat, I think the more days of instruction we can get in now before the flu season hits us in November, I think the better off we'll be as a district. So I think that there's a pretty fair solution to what we're working with here. And again, it's consistent with, they originally told us July 27th, and they pushed it back 3 days. Well, now we're giving ourselves 3 more days by starting school on the 24th. And the department actually will allow 2 of those days to count as instruction days for planning purposes. So what I intend to do is formally bring a calendar in a couple weeks, asking the board for that start date adjustment. And then I'll bring the resolution or something similar to it for MSBA to go along with our start of the year, at least for the first quarter.
How did that go when you talked with ALEA, or did they feel receptive to that? Or?
Yeah, Dave was there.
I believe so. They would like some extra time, and that would definitely help out for planning purposes.
17. So we probably can't wait till then to get that out to families, right? So
Our intent is just to start, I mean, I guess you guys could adjust your agenda and make a motion tonight to approve it the 24th, if you want to. But our intent is to start to distribute that word. And, a lot of people were asking on social media, what's the start date? What's the start date on Friday? We didn't want to say a start date because we hadn't had this discussion yet.
Any other discussion? Doesn't seem like we're slamming it through, but I think it's a great idea. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Pose the same. Motion carries. 8/24 will be our start date.
Well, I mean, that's kind of why we created this page as an example. And this is a place that we can point people to as far as, and this will be evolving as we go along here. But you're right. I think you can't communicate enough on this. And, yeah.
I've had a couple parents ask for maybe a Zoom Q&A session. Would that be something? I think, it seems like when we've done different initiatives and stuff, we've, the last referendum, we've gone to different communities to speak and educate, and we don't have that opportunity really now.
Yeah, that's definitely something unique. We could take a look at something like that. Absolutely.
I just have one other thing, and Mary Jo, this is probably for you. Mike had mentioned definitely AP, maybe not CIS. And I don't want to get into the big discussion of maybe the logistics of that, but I would highly recommend to have some thoughtful discussions about that. And
That's all tied into Riverland and how they allow the model to be taught.
yeah, I know that, and then how we communicate that, because that will look like taking something away. I'm just giving perception.
Mark has, God bless him back there, has told me a number of times, Mike, if we do this, we can't offer this. And my response to Mark is, we are in a pandemic. Okay, we are going to offer the best that we can, according to what we can do.
I had a few extra questions. Thank you, first of all, Kathy, for answering all my questions. I had a ton. But most of them got answered. I think almost all of them did, maybe all of them. But I had a couple follow-ups or just double checking that I had things right. So are we switching the teachers and not the kids? Is that something that we're looking at the high school?
This is something Chris Dibble has talked about. I don't think the high school is going to.
Oh, you're thinking middle school. Okay. Okay, and then,
Again, he hasn't presented that to staff yet, it's just kind of floating out there as a thought.
and then at the high school, are we pretty confident with our numbers that we're gonna be able to do that 6 feet apart? I mean, that just seems really hard.
Yeah, I think we are. I mean, Mark and I were talking before the meeting, and I said, your building is gonna feel empty. It really will. I mean, it's, I don't see that distance learning as a concern at the high school at all at this point with the hybrid model.
And then somewhere it said that, well, no, I remember seeing it, that like, if you're doing there's a benefit to doing distance learning through us than going to a different enrolling in some online option, because the teachers will be communicating at the same pace. So like after quarter one, if this whatever, the distance learning kids are all coming back, or some of them choose to make a change. Of course, their learning was different, but it'll be really close to the same place. Parents can kind of count on that.
Absolutely. The subject area teachers, I mean, I'm talking like at the high school, our science teachers, they've been working together for a number of years. So I would think it'd be very similar to, as opposed to taking a science course from someone else not associated with the district.
And then for the distance learning, is there going to be any, I don't know, is it going to be pretty much, I know that there's going to be more consistency and there's going to be some changes there. Is there going to be any special new programs they're going to be using or anything besides like the Google Classroom? I know we talked about that.
I would say one of the things that we're looking at is counseling, mental health. How are we going to be addressing those needs with the students who are going through distance learning? That came out, Aaron and I were reviewing his survey with Mark this afternoon, and, from the survey Aaron sent out, he said mental health was a significant concern of students. And so how can we address that as a district? So that would be the probably the different thing, or the add-on that we're focused on when we're going to go to it. And then as far as the different programs, I can't get into the specifics, but there will be a lot of different options available.
Okay.
Similar to what we used last spring.
And then 6th and 8th graders, typically they have their back to school day. We're just not going to be able to do that this year.
Correct. And, we talked a little bit about that too, and it will not be as traumatic because you're going to have half the kids there. We're still working with Link Crew on how we're going to introduce those programming the first day of school. So the first day might be look a little bit different for the 8th graders at the high school than it would in a regular first day. But that, again, gives kids more of a chance to orient to the school building.
And then hopefully this is my final question. I know there were a lot.
You know what, Angie? I looked at your questions today and I gave them to Kathy, and I said, Kathy, why don't you answer these? It'll shave a half hour off the meeting.
Yeah. So I guess another concern with the 6th and 8th graders, and actually kind of a bigger concern, because that's when more kids will be there. Like after first quarter, like let's say we're all coming back together, and then the 6th graders and 8th graders are now coming there for the first time, and they're like, holy cow. Is there going to be something special to kind of train them in, or a special day for them?
Yeah, that's what we're looking at, especially if we don't do the orientation.
Okay.
Yep.
Because that's going to be kind of scary for them.
Yes, it is.
Or at least for their parents.
More so for the parents, I think.
Okay. And thank you for all of this and all of the planning and all answering the questions. There's just a lot. Everyone's scared right now, but getting the answers and stuff, I think, helps everyone feel just better, and they say relief.
No.
I got more, Dennis.
A couple of things I was thinking of is, one with the building, because we have to be so safe and cautious with the students in the building. Are we limiting access then to outside groups?
Yes.
And then the second one, and you can answer both and I'll be done. With all the teachers coming back, how are we going to gather them together? Is it going to be Zoom or person?
So
buildings?
Two-part question to that. So yes, we are limiting, we will not have readers theater, we will not have assemblies, we are going to be limiting the who can come into the buildings. Parent can be there if there's an educational need, absolutely. But we're really going to be trying to limit access that way.
Shut down at night, basically.
Yep. And that's something we're going to have to work with, we'll see how the winter goes in community ed. The second piece of that, the all-school back-together group hug with staff will take place at Hammerfield this year. So we're going to do that. We're going to split the staff in half. So we'll have 250 there, the first session at 8, 250 at the 9:30 session to stay within the social distancing guidelines provided by the governor. There will be staff meetings. However, staff who is more at risk will not be attending in person. But again, the staff that is at risk will be working with John Double on the distance learning, and he will have virtual staff meetings with those folks so that they will not be present for those meetings. Does that answer?
Yeah, no,
Okay.
no more.
I just wanted to just reiterate a big thank you because I've shot a lot of questions. Thank you, Mike and others. Because, you know, this is just anxious time for everybody, and everybody has their own story behind how they feel. And so I think this website's going to be fantastic as a resource, and I'm just thankful of all the hard work, and I know a lot has gone into it, so thank you all.
And to that point, I think it's important for us to all be linked in with the communication. I know that a parent letter went out, and so parents were asking me questions. I hadn't seen it, and even teachers hadn't seen it either. So I think it would be good to have a website, but how will we continue to let people know there's new information there that we need to look at, and we need to all be on the same board with that. And also to make sure that what we're putting out is accurate, that I guess, you know, the governor was still giving his announcement when there was an announcement made on the district page that we were going to go one way, and then it was amended later. So that was confusing for some
It was
people.
not amended.
Okay.
Okay, the announcement was we are going to be in person consistent with guidelines provided by the Department of Health and the Department of Education. That's what we're doing.
Okay, so that's confusing because we're doing in-person and hybrid. I think that's where some of the confusion is coming that I heard. So it'll be good to have a website like this. Also, so was today then the last deadline for the parents to give their choice for the first quarter?
We've asked parents to let us know by today. Okay, if parents have not contacted us by today, we will be reaching out to parents starting tomorrow to get their preference.
Okay. And then I know parents can always keep their child home if they feel something is unsafe. So I'm just wondering, I know we've asked them to stay the course for one quarter, but say a parent has said their student would like to come to school, but then they start to feel that it's an unsafe situation halfway through the quarter and they decide to keep their student home, how would that work?
As professionals, we will work with the family to determine what's in the best interest of the child.
Mm-hmm. And then the incident command team, I know, involved a lot of different groups. Will that team actually be meeting as a team itself? I know you mentioned a few of them would be meeting daily, but the whole incident team, will that team be meeting as a team or just kind of individual?
The principals will be meeting as needed based upon what is occurring within their buildings. The school nurses who cover all the buildings, myself and Kathy Niebuhr, will be meeting daily.
Okay. And prior to school starting, will the team be meeting together, or?
Yes.
Okay. And, I mean, everything is just kind of so fluid here, you know, with the 3 scenarios. We could be distant or hybrid or in person. And then there's elementary and secondary. And we could move back and forth between those through the year. Are we going to have 3 detailed plans for each of those 3 scenarios for secondary and elementary?
That is what the leadership teams are working through over the next week or so. And again, my recommendation to the board is, if the conditions allow, for the first quarter, the high school, the secondary stays at the hybrid, so we're not bumping back and forth, and that elementary stays in person.
Mm-hmm. And then, talking about the secondary specifically, as far as the movement of students, I know, or thinking A would be Monday, Wednesday, B would be Tuesday, Thursday. So between Monday and Tuesday, each day, will there be a cleaning of the surfaces, like the desks?
Yes.
Okay. And then, so you're still working on whether students will switch classrooms or whether a teacher will switch and the students will stay?
That will be a building level decision.
Okay. And then with such a shorter day, do you have any idea yet if the entire day period will be shortened, or if you'll have more of a block schedule?
Yeah, they're looking at both options right now.
Okay. And how about students who are distance learning first quarter and then come to school the second quarter, if that's an option? Will there be an orientation for those students?
I think there's a couple things there. There will be probably a pause in school for a few days so that the teachers can adjust to the in-person model. And during that pause, you may see some sort of orientation. The Department of Education allows for up to 5 days for a pause between models.
Mm. And then I was reading, I think it was in the governor's order, that it said that the temperature needs to be taken at either a school or a bus. Are those exclusive, or can our buses also screen temperatures when the kids come on?
We will not be screening temperatures on the buses.
Okay. And how about the students that pay for the busing now, those families? Will that still?
We were not going to allow that. That's something we can revisit now that we are going to be splitting the thing. So Jennifer, relook at that.
Okay. And then as far as staffing, I know you're still working out numbers, but do you anticipate maybe having to hire additional teachers to have smaller class sizes?
No.
While some other distance? Okay.
No.
And then the teachers who are working the distance learning school, when they come back, whenever that will be, to their in-person roles, will they be coming back to their position that they had before, the same school, same class?
We will work with the teachers on what the best interest of the district are. I mean, if we have a teacher who's been teaching 20 years and they're an expert in calculus or some specific area, absolutely, we'd want to put them back in an area that they're very knowledgeable about. It benefits the students and the teacher.
And how about substitutes? Have you gotten any further in that discussion?
Again, the other thing that keeps me up at night are substitutes, and one of the we talked just briefly this afternoon with the ALEA leadership is, you know, we may have to tap into some folks, interventionists, counselors, coaches, to help us substitute teach. Because I can tell you one thing we talked about that we have historically done when we don't have subs, and I made my guaranteed this to the ALEA this afternoon. Sometimes when we don't have subs, and it's in the elementary, we will absorb 2 classes into 1, or 2 classes into 3, or something like that. And that drives up the numbers of the class. The last thing I'm going to do in this environment is absorb kids into a different room and drive up class numbers. So we will not be doing that, but we will have to get subs from someplace else within the building since we're not going to be doing that. And they're aware of that. So.
And how will the curriculum look different for a distance learning, say, elementary class than an in-person class? Do we know that yet?
No, we don't.
Okay. And do we anticipate that our cleaning supplies will be here in time to start on the 24th?
We do, and one of my big concerns was the shields, and they are here. And from what I've been told, we're looking at the end of the week for them to start installing the thermal scanners, so they should be arriving any day. And, PPE is a question. Do you have enough PPE? We have, I think, one individual in the district who we work with where we have to have the full PPE on. So PPE, besides the mask and the shields, is not a major need within the district, and I feel comfortable that we're good with that.
And someone was wondering if the cloth masks would have the metal clasp for the nose. Do we know that?
No, I don't know.
Okay.
We didn't have time to get a sample of that. I don't know.
Yeah. And then my last question, I guess, is just, I know special ed is such a variable department. Is there any way that we can kind of, help those kids and families feel kind of more comfortable? How can we help them know what to expect, I guess, when we really don't have a great idea either?
They kind of got a good idea this past spring. And so we are planning on providing the services in the same aspect. So if our child is distance learning, then we'll provide those services through distance learning. But we're hoping that a majority of them do come back to us.
Thank you.
I think I can phrase it as just one, though. Conferences, will we have before school conferences
Yes.
for the distance learning and the non-distance learning?
Great question. So yes, we will be having conferences in person for students coming in person, and for distance learning, we will set up distance learning conferences. Kindergarten Roundup has been a major point of discussion in the district. Kindergarten Roundup will be occurring on Monday the 17th, okay, in person. So I've seen that out there on social media. We've moved the date a couple times, but we've landed on Monday the 17th. So good question.
For all schools?
Yes.
Just want to say Mike and Kathy, Mary Jo, Jennifer, Tammy, everyone, this is, the meeting I was able to attend today and listen to the ALEA was amazing. It's such great, you guys have had so much planning. It hasn't just happened in 2 days. And that's what's awesome, because you do have answers to the questions, but there's a multitude of other questions that'll be out there that I have full confidence you guys will figure out. And thank you for all the work. And it's continuing work, because I know things continue to change, but our kids and our parents, I know, will truly appreciate it as they grasp what's going on. Thanks. Paul, you asked a question earlier. You're up.
You had a slide at some point about participation and affordability.
Was it survey data?
Probably, yeah.
Um,
So if you could just share that, you don't have to show it, you can just share it with the board.
yeah, I'll pull the data up here. That kept them from.
Yeah, but 1 in 4 of our students said, you know, the cost was a potential barrier to them participating.
Did you also ask about equipment or just the fees?
I did.
Questions for Paul? Thank you for the numbers, Paul. Appreciate it.
All right, stay tuned tomorrow. I think we'll have more info.
Can't wait. All right, that brings us to number 6. First, I just announced that Monday, August 17th will be our next regularly scheduled board meeting. And thanks for sticking with us tonight. Meeting's adjourned.